Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the world famous Jonesy and Brown show. That man standing right over there. It's been a long time since we haven't done a show in the same room in like years now.
Last time we did a show in the same room,
it was like 2000.
Was pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Now it's like, man, I done had COVID twice. You might never come over my crib now.
Oh, I ain't scared. I've never had it.
You've never had it? Are you serious?
Yeah. At this point, I don't think I could get it.
Whatever. Apparently, I just got, I just got the special gene because I've now had it twice and kicked my butt twice. It's COVID-2, John Brown 0.
The wife has had it. Parents have had it.
Yeah. Yep. This past weekend, it was,
a few people I've had it.
You have not had it.
Never had it.
Well, look, man. Consider yourself lucky, man. There ain't nothing to play with. I know certain people, people have their opinions on it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, look, I'm not going to tell people how to think either way, but I feel like it's not hard to sift through what everyone is saying and find a solution that makes sense. And therefore, take care of yourself. Wear a mask when you think you need to wear a mask. Wash your hands. Wash your behind. And take care of yourself. There you go. That's your PSA from me. Wash your hands or wash your behind and wear a mask when need be.
I hear you.
And knowing is half the battle.
But at some point, natural selection becomes a thing. Like, if you know how to take care of yourself and you don't take care of yourself, however you define taking care of yourself, I'm not taking sides in this conversation. That's not what we're here for.
No.
I'm just saying, if you know how to take care of yourself and you don't take care of yourself,
I get it. Well, look, in the time that we've been away, we've now watched our beloved Philadelphia Eagles play not too belovedly. Their season is done. Sixers are underway. Now they got issues of their own.
Embiid with a torn meniscus.
Yeah, that just came out in the last hour or so. So, we have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
All right.
Sixers' plan is to take the weekend to determine a treatment plan for Embiid. Obviously, he'll be out at least the weekend, but most likely longer. And that essentially knocks him out of contention for any postseason awards. And at a time where he was having the best season of his career on court, Nick Nurse had unlocked a level of play from Embiid and Maxey also that honestly I did not think was possible based on what I saw from them, what I had seen from them while playing under Doc Rivers.
Well, look,
who has a job now?
Yeah, he does. There you go. Look, we'll talk about a lot of that if there's time. We got a guest this week, man. I had originally it is always fun. I originally was going to call a family meeting because we needed to discuss the Eagles. But like I said, brother had COVID for the last 2 weeks, so I had to cancel the family meeting and then cancel the family meeting again. And then when it came time to reconvene, the family just told me, man, forget it, man. We ain't got time for you. And all we had left was Roy, and that was it. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy Burton.
I'm your backup plan. Is that what it is?
Yes. You said it like Roy's the consolation prize.
All we had left was Roy.
Roy, I'm happy to have you.
Only person left is Roy.
I appreciate it. At least 50%. At least 50% of your show is happy that I'm here. Thank you.
No, come on, man. Look, brother. You know it's good to have a star like Roy on the show because Roy is a busy man. Roy's got a lot going on.
Trying to be like you, man.
No, why are you trying to be like me, man? You ain't trying. Look, you hear Roy every week on the BS line. You can also hear Roy all the time on Fox Sports The Gambler. Mike Jones, have you ever been on Fox Sports The Gambler?
I haven't.
No, I too. I know Sean Brace.
I know Sean.
I know Sean Brace. Me and Sean Brace have been cool for a long time. I have not been on Fox Sports The Gambler. Roy Burton is on. I know. I'm not trying to put you in.
He's a program director. I'm not the program director.
No, he runs things. No, I understand. This it's not even a beef. You know, but yeah, you know, the fact is you're still a busy man. You know, he's got his own show. You hear him on Fox Sports The Gambler all the time. You know, everyone knows proud Temple alum.
TU, that's right.
Yes, sir. Mike, I was talking Temple basketball this week with Roy because somebody brought up Rasheed Brokenborough.
Yeah.
She was a baller.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. He was a baller.
Yes, he was. And and the thing that kind of sparked the conversation was another friend of the show. And I'll put him on blast, but he's still my man. Javon Alford wasn't familiar with Rasheed Brokenborough. And I understand that might be a little bit before his time.
A little bit
before his time, but I'm like, bruh, those late 90s Temple squads were pretty tough.
You might as well ask about Mark Karcher or something.
Yes.
Basically.
Mark Karcher, Lynn Greer,
Lynn Greer, Quincy Wadley. That was my era. That was I was in Temple 96 to 2000.
That's when you were there.
Era.
Okay,
that was my era. I was a tutor for a few of those guys. I was one of the athletes.
Okay,
the basketball guys. So Lamont Barnes, like all those dudes. Like, we said Kevin Lyde. I don't know if we mentioned him. Kevin Lyde. Like those teams were stacked, man. They were
absolutely.
They got the two Elite Eights, man. Like you can't knock them, man. Like they had a heck of a run during that late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh yeah, that's when Temple basketball, you could count on them as a tournament, probably a Sweet 16 team almost every year at that point. You were surprised if they fell short of that.
Yeah. And John Chaney used to always know how to get the most out of those players because you would see Temple and you see the size of that program, but John Chaney would always put some national powerhouses on that schedule. I was looking at that 98-99 team that went to the Sweet 16, and you look at how they started the season. 4-0, beat Georgetown, Wake Forest, number 5 Michigan State. You know, that's to start the season.
Yeah,
that's who John Chaney's putting on this. That's how John Chaney's starting the season. Michigan State.
Yeah, that was the good Mateen Cleaves and Mo Peterson era.
Exactly.
That was a huge win for Temple. Yeah, I think
no one
were 5 at the time. Number 5.
And no one could ever accuse Chaney of being scared of anything or anyone.
Exactly.
No,
that wasn't part of his DNA.
No. It's like you play with the big dogs by playing with the big dogs. You know, you don't just say, "Hey, my team is good." You go out there and he put them on the schedule. But look, man, I want Roy. Before we get started, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about what you got going on now. I mean, you really have been a busy guy. I see you with your own show. You're creating your content now. Real quick, how long have you been doing this now?
Oh, geez, doing the podcast stuff or
because
I've been around for. I mean, I've been around for a while. I started with Bleacher Report. Late, I guess. Basically when they first started, when Bleacher Report was kind of up and running. So I guess early 2010s. I was doing some Bleacher Report stuff. I was a Sixers feature columnist for a while for Bleacher Report. Then I was an NBA columnist for them for a while. I did some stuff from their breaking news team. So I was there for a while, and then a couple years after that is when I linked up with the crew over at Liberty Ballers.
Yeah.
So Liberty Balls, SB Nation, great crew. That was for those anybody who's like a Sixers fan, basically everybody who covers the Sixers now in the city was on Liberty Ballers back then. It was Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, Seamus Clancy, like Rich Hoffman. We were all at Liberty Balls at the same time, not getting paid anything, but just having fun. Writing about Brett Brown's basketball teams that won 19 games a season. I mean, it was just like, it was like the teams were terrible, but like we just had so much fun because there was just so much talent around that everybody kind of wanted to kind of one up everybody else. So it was just great time, at Liberty Ballers. And then from there, like you said, I started my own podcast to kind of do my own thing. Well, actually, I had that pretty much the whole time. The Broad Street Line, I have that the whole time. And then we linked up with 106.5, the public radio station here, to put that on the radio, to move from that. So that was back in 2018, I think it was 2018. We linked up with them, and then since then, just kind of build that up. And then I guess last summer is when I linked up with your good friend John, Sean Brace, at Fox Sports The Gambler, because they were kind of looking for. He said, like, Sean's goal. He says, you want eventually, once they kind of get some more resources, they want 24 hours of local programming. Like they want to build out that roster. They want to build out what they have going over at iHeartRadio. I'm like, look, like, is there a spot for me? Like, I know, like, like you want to build out some stuff. It's like you guys, don't really do much with, fantasy football. It's a gambling focus, radio station. So they do most of gambling stuff, but it's like you guys don't really have a whole lot of fantasy football stuff or anything like that. I was like, is there a spot for me? He's like, yeah. I was like, we don't really have a fantasy guy. So like, you know what, whenever you want to show up a studio, whenever you want to do, fantasy stuff, like, come under the tent. So, I just started showing up. Started doing things and started trying to make things happen. So now I'm kind of part of that family. So it's, like you said, it's like, it's one of those things where you got to stay busy, if you want to kind of like, open up some doors in the business. So yeah, so I've been doing this for a little bit.
Now you definitely one of the OGs in the city. Now, people look to you for advice. They've watched you do it, especially now when you see what a lot of these outlets have become. You see, like Liberty Ballers has gone from being like small, up like just up and coming site to now that's where people go to. And the same with Bleacher Report too. So, to see what Bleacher Report has become over the last 10 years, is definitely, it's impressive. And like for me, like, because the three of us, we all grew up in this area. So we always, we knew what outlets people had for sports and sports dialogue. What made you decide to go this route instead of the more traditional routes, like the more like the newspapers and the traditional sports talk radio stations?
That's a good question. The thing is, it kind of like the sports talk radio station was kind of like, I won't say the original goal, but like, because before, coming up, we read some of the greatest columnists and beat writers ever, like Phil Jasner's and Stan Hockman's and all those. Like, there's so many, like everybody, like, you would run, like all of us, like Monday morning, you get the daily news, you flip to the back page, and you're reading like some of the best of the best. Rich Hoffman, Rich Hoffman Sr., is his dad, all those guys. And so I always wanted to be a writer initially. Like that's where I wanted to do. But I didn't want to be like the beat writer. Like I didn't want to like start off and like just be the beat writer, because they'll stick you on like high school basketball for like 5 years, and then like I just wanted to be a column. Like, I just wanted to say like I have opinions and things like that. So I'm like, all right, well, if I was if I have opinions, then maybe it might be easier just to kind of just can do a podcast thing or do a radio thing, because then you can do your opinion that way. So so when I was with Bleacher Report, like they let me do a little bit of it, but like it was not enough. So I'm like, all right, you know what? If I just start, do a radio show, do a podcast or whatever like that, then I can control what I talk about, when I talk about it in the topic. So that's kind of where I kind of gravitated towards, even though I love writing and I want to get back to it, but it's like, it takes a long time to kind of write and write well. And just, but just by, podcasting and being on shows like this, it's like I just love the conversation, like it's just again, it always comes back to like sports. Like the best conversations that we have about sports are like, guys just sitting around, whether it's on a podcast or at a barbershop or like a cookout or something like that. Like those are the best conversations. And like you don't get that when you write, because you kind of sit up in a room and you kind of like hold up and trying to get a couple thousand words down. So like I kind of like the energy, when it comes to talking about sports with people, because that's really what it's all about: camaraderie and fellowship.
So I've questioned covering sports in Philly. Philly media has a notorious reputation for being harsh on the athlete.
Yeah.
Do you go out of your way to try to temper that when you're actually interacting with athletes, or you just say, whatever, I'm gonna be me and ask my questions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it's funny because I don't interact with athletes a lot, but I mean, I have in the past and things like that. But that's a really good question, because it's like, how do you? Because I'm a fan just like everybody else,
Right.
but at the same time, like if you're in front of a camera or if you're in front of a microphone, it's a little bit different. And it's one of those things where it's like, and I think I had some epiphany at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was probably when I was, JB, when I was doing Birds Outsiders, when I was doing NBC Sports Philadelphia, because like the Eagles have a bad game, and I would just want to go on camera and start ripping everybody, just because like
right.
Nelson Aguilar dropped the ball, he's trash. You know what I mean? Like it's like at some point, it's like, it's like, would I say this to Nelson Aguilar if he was like in front of me? I was like, I probably wouldn't. So maybe I shouldn't say it, if I'm in front of a microphone, or maybe I shouldn't say it in front of a camera. So I kind of like, when it comes to that stuff, like I kind of temper it down. It's like, what, if I wouldn't say it to the person, I wouldn't go in the locker room and say it, or if I wouldn't say it to him in his face, I probably wouldn't say it. I would just phrase it differently, because we can always say somebody's had a bad game. Like, that's fine. But I'm not going to call somebody trash or whatever, like if I'm not going to say it, say it directly to them. So I think that's for me, that I think that's where the line is, and I try not to cross that.
Okay.
Do you find that annoying when you hear people doing it, when oh, this person, and even if a person has played poorly,
right?
It's like, maybe in your personal opinion, maybe a player is trash, but like you said, you're not going to say that because you wouldn't say it to his face. Fair enough. But when you see people aren't as mature as you. People don't take that. Not everybody takes that approach.
So let's be honest. Some people frame stuff for clicks and hot takes.
Exactly.
And that's the environment we're in now.
Exactly. No, Jones, you got it right, man. That's what it is, man. Like, people do it for clicks. People do it for like, the thing is, like, really, like, what I think, like, these radio stations and like the YouTubers and things like that, even the talking head shows, like, I think their goal every day is like to say one or two things that go viral, right? Like, say something that's going to get somebody going. And whether you got to call somebody trash, or whether you got to have a top 5 list that's terrible, or whether you have to say AJ Brown's going to get traded, like, you're trying to do something. You're trying to push
we're gonna get into that in a second. We're gonna circle back to that too.
Yeah, like I think these guys are trying to push that envelope to say, all right, let me, like, what's the one thing I can get away with, and that's going to that's going to spin the news cycle for 24 hours. I mean, I think that's kind of bogus, to be honest with you. Like, I hate that. Like, but at the same time, I understand it. Like, I understand, like, that's why, like, these sports talk radio guys are the way they are. Like, I get it, because they got to get ratings and they got to say things like that. But I think there's a way to do it without doing that. But the guys who do it get the ratings and get money and get paid. So it's like, you're kind of stuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think about all these athletes now? Now they're starting their own podcast. They're doing their own shows.
Active athletes.
Active, yeah. Now you have people. I mean, they're literally like skipping press conferences. Go home, turn on their webcam.
Oh, Mike, you talk about Michael Parsons?
Okay,
because he absolutely didn't talk after that Cowboys loss to the Packers. But a week or so later, he pops up with having unchallenged conversation on his podcast.
Right.
Rather than being an environment where you say something and you might be challenged on it or get some pushback. These guys are just taking it to their own platforms and their own controlled environments. Does that make your job harder?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I mean, like they're you're getting the information directly from the source, and I think it makes the media's job harder, and I think it clearly makes these athletes richer, because I mean, you see like these guys like getting these deals, like, or the best example of that is the whole Draymond Jordan Poole thing. Draymond punched Jordan Poole, got suspended. You didn't hear from that dude until he went on his podcast and started talked about it. It's like, bro, like you just punched a teammate, like got caught on video. Like you should at some point need to answer to the media first, right? But it's like, nah, man, like he just went home, grabbed his microphone, and just like like spouted out his whatever reasons to like his podcast folks, and I'm sure he got paid off those clicks and views. So, I mean, like it's like for them, like for athletes, I get it because Jonesy, like you said, like it's a controlled environment. Nobody's going to push you. Nobody's going to press you. That's why, like, I don't take too much out of these athlete podcasts because they really don't give you much. Like they're going to give you what they want to give you. You know what I'm saying?
I was going to ask you that next.
Yeah, like it's going to give you. It's like LeBron James in the shop. He's going to give you what he's going to give you. You know what I mean? Like all God bless LeBron James and everybody, but he's only going to give you what passes he edits. Before he turns it into Max or whoever it's on now. So, like this stuff is like it's not real and unfiltered and raw, and nobody's pressing anybody for answers. Oh yeah, it's really a sanitized version of the story.
But do you think that these athletes choosing to go this route is sort of a product of where media has gone? We've talked about the content creators and the media people who would make their statements for clicks and trying to make more provocative statements. Like we've now watched this now over the last 25 years now. Yeah. In the rise of the pardon the interruptions and the around the horns. Now the reporters are the stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've gone from the athletes being the stars to now, the reporters are the stars, the columnists are the stars.
Right.
And to Jonesy's point, because I think you're absolutely right. You're seeing these athletes get their own podcast and they're telling a watered down story of what's happening. But I think there are athletes who feel like, all right, there are media people who are asking questions that are supposed to be unbiased to get a story, who have an angle, who are working an angle, who are trying to get clicks. So the athlete feels like, if I'm going to tell my story, if you're going to use my story for clicks, it's going to be clicks on my site. I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, like I think you saw that. Well, I mean, like you said, like we've seen the evolution of it over the last 25 years. But I mean, like I think you see it a lot now. With the podcast and with that site, the Players Tribune.
I was just thinking about the Players Tribune.
Somebody has something to say, like the Kevin Durant. Like I'm coming. Here's my next move, Kevin Durant. You can use the media to tell your story the way you want to tell it. Because again, like I think. Back then, like I won't say back then, but 30 years ago, there was a traditional beat writer, thing, and beat writers would tell the story of the athletes and things like that. And then you saw, and kind of sad to say, but you saw like when, I guess in like the early 2000s when like, Sports Illustrated was doing like more like the long form profile writing, you would see certain columnists or certain long form people, like, I don't want to say cozy up to, but like be guys who athletes trusted to tell their story. Like you would see certain people, or even some people, like I'll say, like Jamel Hills, like Namina Kimes. Like, there were certain people when they were columnists, like athletes would go to them and say, "All right, I want you to tell my story because I trust you to tell my story." And we saw a lot of that, like in the early 2000s. But but now that these athletes have, the Players Tribune, have their own websites, have their own, blogs and podcasts, I don't think they even need to go through that intermediary. Like I don't think they need to find somebody they can trust, because it's like, hey, I can sit down and grab a microphone and just tell you my story. So where it goes from now, I mean, I'm not sure, but like I think we're going to see less and less of that traditional media, with those, in-depth pieces or long form pieces, or just trying to get, the real story about the athletes. Because I think the athletes say, you know what, let me just, monetize this myself and cut out the middleman.
And I'm glad you used that phrase, the real story, because the one thing why I do like athletes having the opportunity to tell their side of the story, where there are some writers who have been known to have agendas against players and things like that. But with that, how can I say this? To be a professional athlete, you have to have at least some level of ego.
Right.
You have to be extremely confident to be a professional athlete. So a lot of times when you hear it on their platforms without the pushback, the story almost sounds self-aggrandizing and disingenuous, like, So the reporter gave it a good reporter, for me as the audience, would provide context and some balance. Even if it's not like being contentious, I might challenge a more far-fetched statement that the athlete made. I might not, or something that seems a little more unbelievable. But without that, and the other part is these kids grew up in the internet era where everything is about branding yourself.
Yeah.
So, control your image, control your brand. You are that was something that didn't happen in previous generations with the athletes. Their brand came from being on the court and winning.
Right.
These guys have so many other things. It's like, I almost feel like a lot of ways I know too much about athletes.
You know a lot more. I mean, we know a lot more about athletes than we did 5 years ago. I mean, literally, like everybody has a podcast. Everybody, has a YouTube channel, and everybody's kind of, telling you like a guy. No offense to Paul Reed, but a guy like Paul Reed wouldn't have, his own podcast or we wouldn't know this much about Paul Reed 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? But again, he has his own podcast. Like he's he's out on YouTube. He's doing his own thing because again, you can kind of monetize things and make your money. But at some point, like there's going to be some kind of oversaturation with this, right? Like everybody's like jumping into doing this. Like at some point, like you're going to thin this out, and people are going to say, like, you know what? I don't have time to listen to like 100 different podcasts or whatever. And not to say that like some of these are bad or anything like that. Like the good ones are the good ones, but at some point, like when you have 1,000 200 NBA players on the podcast, they're not all going to be good, right? So at some point, like some of those are just going to fall by the wayside. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what where this goes next, because like Jonesy, you're right. It's like everybody's on their own platforms, making their brand, but they never get pushed back. Like I would love to see something like that where you have an athlete, but then you have a respected journalist
as his co-host or something sitting there with
the co-host to say like, hey, you know what, like maybe that's not necessarily true, or push back a little bit or whatever like that, because that to me would be like different than like 99% of the stuff that we get today, because you never see it. You just don't see it anymore. Yeah.
Coming up next is the Furkan Korkmaz podcast.
He probably has one in Turkey.
He probably does. I'm over here making fun of him.
We'll even know. We'll even know, man.
Furkan Korkmaz, I promise you, Furkan Korkmaz podcast probably get more listeners and more views than Jonesy and Brown, like just right off the rip. And that's a problem, because we've been doing this. This is show number 71 for Jonesy and Brown.
Furkan got a whole country behind him.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm saying, man. Furkan's got a lot more X followers than any of us. So
I can't even get North Philly behind us.
Oh man, we'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Hey, look, it's been good getting to know you, Roy, but we brought you on to talk Eagles, man.
Let's do it. Well, do we have to? I mean, do we really have to talk Eagles?
Yeah, we got to.
All right.
You see me taking deep breaths before we get started.
Yeah.
I prepare myself mentally.
All right. I got a little beverage next to me, so a little spike vodka here.
We all do, but
all right.
This is the problem, and this is what makes this kind of unprecedented, because the Eagles, on paper, in theory, this is an 11-win team. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not. That is, you cannot use that for any other context other than the fact that the record book will say this team won 11 games.
Correct.
However, Jonesy, you and I, we've covered a lot of football together. We've talked a lot of football together. We have discussed a couple of pretty bad Eagles seasons together.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I have talked about is the narratives and the stories that permeate an off season when you have a bad team. When there's optimism, when there's positivity to build on, things are good. The off season can go quickly. You're sitting up there like next thing you know, season's over. Next thing you know, it's the draft. Next thing you know, you're
about to get ahead of me with this, JB. I know where this is going. You're about to get ahead of me.
No. All I'm saying is, I'm looking at the story. These are the story. These storylines that you're hearing.
I know exactly what you're saying. You're getting ahead of me because this is going to take us one place, and I don't want to go there yet. Not yet. This is going to take us one place.
Let me make this statement, and then I will gladly hand the floor to you, and we go wherever you want to go. All I know is I feel like these types of stories that we're hearing are stories that you hear when the team is awful. This feels like an awful team off season, and it's not. It shouldn't.
It is. It is an awful team off season. The team that finished the season for the Eagles looked awful on the field. So you're approaching the off season like a team that has to fix the things an awful team had to fix, because they do. That being said, the first things they've addressed were offensive and defensive coordinator. And give Roy a second.
Look, Roy's a professional.
No problem. So the first things they've addressed, the first problem.
Hold on. What player was that calling you, Roy?
It was Nelson Aguilar. I apologize for that.
But yeah, so the first steps they've taken to fix this team and address the problems, they've replaced both coordinators.
Again,
they went with vets. Kellen Moore's still fairly young in his mid-30s, but he's been around for a while at this point. He's not a new coordinator. Vic Fangio, who was reportedly the target they wanted last year before your friend did what he did go into Arizona. And how should we look at these two hires?
Well, let me circle back because JB, I want to get back to your original statement about this feels like a terrible offseason, and it is, because Jonesy's right. But I just want to say, like, after a Super Bowl, after a season where you lose in the Super Bowl, expectations change, right? Like we came into the year Super Bowl or bust. Started out 10-1. And when you finish, when you lay the eggs, the multiple eggs that they laid at the end of the season, like, yes, this is a very awful season. Like, this is going to be in the record books. You're going to see 11-6, but in your heart, when you look back at the 2023 season, you're going to say, you know what, that was a disgusting display of football I saw for a lot of that year, and that's why you needed to make that change. That's why you needed to bring in 2 new coordinators to basically. Nothing like, if nothing else, these 2 guys will own their side of the football, right? Like, Vic Fangio is going to own the defense. Like you don't have to worry about the defense. Vic Fangio is going to command respect that Sean Desai didn't command, that Matt Patricia didn't command. Like, he's going to own it, right? If anything goes wrong with it, like, he'll fix it or whatever. And the same thing with Kellen Moore. I mean, like, you may or may not like Kellen Moore's style. We'll talk more about Kellen Moore, but Kellen Moore is going to own the offense, way better than whatever hybrid Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni duo had owning the offense. So if nothing else, you have 2 guys who are going to own their side of the locker room, which is great because you didn't have that this year. And then all you need now is for Nick Sirianni to focus on being the what I call the CEO of the team. Now, whether or not you think he's good at that, that's a different question. I don't think he's that skilled in that. But that being said, like, he has less to worry about because he's not going to be part of the offense now. You have a guy who, again, whatever you think of Kellen Moore, he's infinitely better than Brian Johnson, and he has a track record of having good offenses. So I think you're better off in the coaching, in the coordinators on both sides of the ball. The fact of the matter is the CEO is the guy who's going to be in charge of game management and game day management, things like that. Do you have enough faith in him? And the guy who's going to fix things if things go wrong. Do you have enough faith in him to take care of his side of the ball? I don't say his side of the ball because he owns the locker room, but do you have faith in him of taking care of his duties? And that's the big question mark. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel necessarily, but I'm not quite sold on Nick Sirianni as that leader of men.
Why not?
So, really, a lot of it comes down to what happened at the end of the season. Because again, you have a super talented team, Super Bowl or bust. I mean, I know we all knew that there were flaws with this team. I mean, they started out 10-1, but this team never really looked like a 10-1 team at any point in the season. I mean, like I don't think we saw a single game where they played a complete game on both sides of football. Like through
closest was probably the Dolphins game.
Probably the Dolphins game. Yeah, I'm thinking, because that
was probably the closest to it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was more like 3 quarters than a complete game.
Right. Right. Yeah. On both sides of the ball, like I can't see it. Like there were problems with this team all year, and they were never addressed. Well, they weren't addressed properly. I don't say they were never addressed, but they weren't addressed properly by whoever's in charge, the OC, the DC, the head coach. And then at the end, well, not the end, near the end of the season, when clearly the defense was a mess. It's like your decision, because again, you're the CEO of the team, and your decision to quote unquote fix the defense is to take away the play calling decisions from Sean Desai and give them to Matt Patricia. And then your defense got even worse. So like, I don't trust you to fix basically, if I don't trust you to fix things when they go bad, and I don't trust you to motivate your team when things go bad, then what are you doing? What do you what's your role here? And that's where that's why I'm a little bit skeptical as far as what Nick Sirianni does, with this team this coming year.
But I feel like I hear what you're saying, but for Sirianni, there seems to be more of a groundswell of support from within that locker room. That I feel like, for me, my reference point is Jonesy's favorite coach, Charles Kelly. And the vibes surrounding that team towards the end of that era.
Yeah.
Where it seemed like this was a team, this seemed like a fractured team, and there were more outward hints that this team was fractured, where it seems like, yes, this team has problems, but I'm not necessarily sure if the team feels like the coach is the problem, whereas when it was Chipper, it was leaning that way.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, like that's good. I can't argue that. Like when the end of the Charles P. Kelly era, like when that happened, like it needed to happen because again the vibes are bad. He was walking past people in the locker room, not talking. Like it was just like everything was like canceling Christmas parties. Like everything was just off, right? Like it just wasn't right. And that's not like I don't get that vibe from this team. I think by and large, like these guys like Nick Sirianni. He got them to a Super Bowl last year. I mean, like they won a bunch of games. Like they're not like you said, on paper, they're not a bad football team. They're a talented football team. But if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, like I just kind of look at this as if I'm Jeffrey Lurie. It's like, can this dude right the ship? Right? It's kind of like, it's a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like the Adrian Griffin, Doc Rivers thing in Milwaukee, right? Adrian Griffin's not a bad coach. I mean, they were second in the East. They were 3.5 games behind Boston for the top spot in the East. But for whatever reason, Milwaukee thought, you know what, this isn't the guy that can get us over the top. And that's where I am with Nick Sirianni. Like, I think he's fine. I think he can go somewhere else and probably be fine and be a decent coach and all that stuff. But in this locker room, in this situation, I don't think he has enough to push this group of guys back to that level, if that makes sense.
Is that for you a big change in where you were on Sirianni a year ago? Like, was it this season that dropped your confidence in him, or were you always somewhat skeptical about his ability to lead?
No, he sold me last year. I mean, look, when you get to a Super Bowl a couple years in, like you're doing something. Like you're doing something. Like he's not a bad coach. He sold me quite a bit last year. Like I think he's a pretty decent. No, nothing for nothing. I think he's a decent motivator of men, more or less. It's just that but everything. It's like it's easy to be a good motivator of men. When you have an all-world quarterback and he's throwing the ball all over the world, and AJ Brown's putting up crazy numbers, and like if things are going right, like the three of us can coach the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like if we have those guys, like we can get 10 wins. You know what I mean? If everything's going right, it's just that I need to have faith in my coach when things go wrong, because things are going to go wrong. Like things are going to go left, and like you see, the Chiefs earlier this year, they had a couple games span where they look awful, like they look terrible. And it's like, all right, well, a good coach kind of gets you out of your tailspin, gets you right, and gets you back on track. And that's what Big Red did. And that's the missing piece for Nick Sirianni. I don't think he can quite do that here with this team. Maybe 5 years from now, when he goes somewhere else and kind of learns a couple things, maybe he'll have that. For me, he'll have that ability. He'll get those stripes or whatever like that. But I don't think he's at that level of a coach yet where he's good enough to because again, from what we saw this year, that he's good enough to kind of kick the team in the rear when they need it.
Okay. Go ahead, JB.
No.
Okay, so moving away from the coaching staff for a second, my next question is, in the last 3 seasons, I've essentially seen 3 different versions of Jalen Hurts. There was the first year Jalen Hurts, the starter, who was good with his legs.
Right.
And then there was last year Jalen Hurts, who we were all jaws on the floor, amazed at how quickly he had raised the level of his play.
Yeah.
To this year's Jalen Hurts, who looked decent in stretches, but there was, without detailing everything, there was some things left to be desired. Say it kindly. Which of those do you think is closest to the real Jalen Hurts?
Jonesy, that's really the $1 million question. It's probably how much is he getting paid? 200, 300, 400 million question. That's really the question. Obviously we want it to be year 2 Jalen Hurts. I don't think it's I think we can all agree it's not year 3 Jalen Hurts. I'm gonna take the easy way out. I think it's a combination between year 2 and year 3 Jalen Hurts. I think year 2 Jalen Hurts was just, like you said, it was just a magical year. Like he just amazed everybody. It was just unbelievable, what he was able to do with his arm, with his legs and things like that. This year, obviously, but between the offensive coordinator switch and the knee injury and just whatever bad vibes or whatever like that, like I think everything just went completely left. Because he had like 21 turnovers. Count the fumbles in there as well. Like it was just, I don't think he's that careless with the football. But again, I think the prior year Jalen Hurts was a little bit of an outlier as well. So I think the real Jalen Hurts is probably somewhere in the middle, which again is still a top 8 quarterback in the NFL. I don't want to put numbers on it, but he's not a guy who's going to throw 17 interceptions a year. But he's not going to be a guy who throws like 2. So if he gives you I don't know, 24 touchdowns, like 7 or 8 interceptions, but then he's going to give you another 12 touchdowns, with his legs. I think that's the Jalen Hurts that we should expect. I think that's the Jalen Hurts that, the Eagles paid for. And that's enough Jalen Hurts to win a title. Again, like Jalen Hurts, like the 85% of the Jalen Hurts that we saw in 2022 is an elite quarterback. So, I don't think he's that far away from it. Put him in the right offensive scheme, like the line's still going to be solid, like the wide, your wide receiver 1 and 2 still coming back. Kellen Moore, has an affinity for passing the ball. So
is wide receiver number 1 coming back?
Yeah,
because he wants to be traded, man.
Listen,
he wants help, man.
Listen, JB, I know you want the clicks like them other people on the other stations telling lies for these clicks.
This is why I didn't want to talk about narrative.
Don't be like them. Don't be like them.
I knew where it was going.
Don't be like them. Don't be like it. I know. No, listen. I know you want the views.
I do want the views. I do want the views. At some point,
don't sell out for the views, man.
At some point in time, I got to stop doing this show in my basement.
AJ Brown.
At what point in time can I stop doing this show in my basement and start doing it in a real studio? I got to talk about. I got to make up some issues. So since the team didn't win anything, we got trounced in the first round by the Bucks.
Baker Mayfield
started looking like Tom Brady.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. So
I
therefore.
You could be mad, man. You could be mad. You should be mad. You should be upset.
I am
be upset, but we can't. We can't manufacture storylines. We can't do it, man. We got to be righteous. We got to stand on the mountaintop of righteousness when it comes to this. Like trading AJ Brown. Come on, man. Like what are we doing? Like
exactly.
Listen. Here's the thing, right? And it's hard. Like I can't imagine. Like you guys have your podcast. I have my podcast. Whatever like that. I can't imagine having to go on the radio for 4 hours every day of the year and fill that 4 hours with content, right? Like that's a really hard job to do. That's a very difficult to do, right? That being said, you don't have to fill it with nonsense, right? Like you can fill the 4 hours without making some fake controversies, right? Like there has to be a way to do it, to fill that time without saying AJ Brown, who has it was like $41 million like dead cap hit if he gets traded. Like that's not even a reasonable scenario. Like you can fill 4 hours of content and not have like fugazi scenarios out here, right? Like there has to be a way.
Like no team is going to take a $40 million dead cap hit on a wide receiver.
Care about
a receiver that can still play.
Nobody cares about dead cap hits. Know what they care about? Trading AJ Brown for no reason.
You know who cares about dead cap hits? Your general manager.
Well,
not only does he care, he cares more than most other general managers.
No, I understand.
Like, the cap is his thing.
Look,
how he's not going to do anything that reckless. Like, what are we talking about here?
I'm telling you what we're talking about. The name of the show is Jonesy and Brown, not Jonesy and Roseman. So yes, Howie Roseman has to worry about dead cap hits. I understand that. Me doing this show in my basement, trying to get these clicks, I don't care about dead cap hits.
Oh man.
I mean, we all know. I mean, in all seriousness, we all know the phrase, and something I've said on here before. You listen to the fans, you end up joining them. That's what happens, It's Howie knows the truth. Of course he knows the truth, and we're pretty sure I'm pretty sure Howie Roseman doesn't watch Jonesy and Brown. He doesn't listen to the podcast. He's missing out, but he doesn't.
I don't know if there was a stretch last season where I thought somebody at the Eagles was listening.
That is true. Because Jonesy for real came out like after like a game, like I don't know why Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to his left. He's not throwing to his left enough.
Like every week,
and then, the very next game,
check the tape. I'd say I need to see this and I need to see that. Next game, I'm coming out and I'm seeing it. So it was a beautiful thing to watch last year.
I'm like Jonesy. I think Jalen Hurts listens to the Jonesy and Brown show. I think maybe he's listening to it on his way to the game. He's like, let me check out these brothers. They speak the truth. But nonetheless, it's like that was a story. Should the Eagles trade AJ Brown? And the response that I got from the two of you, my brothers, Roy, Jonesy, that's the truth. That's annoying. Of course they're not going to trade AJ Brown. Of course, why would you even ask AJ Brown, does he want to be traded? At this point in time, if he wanted to be traded, he would have said that.
He'd have told you. He'd have made it clear.
He would have been very clear. He would have said, hey, man, I want out.
He hasn't said he wants out. Nobody in the organization has said they want him gone. His cap, his contract is prohibitive to him moving.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback is still in the early years of this deal where the number is very cap hit friendly. Mm-hmm. You're likely to lose some larger contracts to retirement this year. Why would you even think about trading him?
You wouldn't. And I think part of the problem is also, how this got put out there. This was just a poll on a local radio station. and then you see it gets picked up by a bunch of Twitter accounts that just put the name rumor in their name. Not verified, not a reporter, and all it says is rumor has it out of Philly that AJ Brown wants to be traded. A report says, and we have to give this some sort of credibility because it was reported,
right?
And to me, it's like, okay, that I find that annoying because it's like stories like this don't have traction when there's optimism in your off season.
But stories like this shouldn't have traction at all. What annoys me is that but what annoys me about stories like this is that we even end up talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like something like this, I would just, because I know it's going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wasting time like putting thought, effort into something that I know is foolishness. That's just me.
I think part of the problem is, and it's that word that you hate when I use, but it's narratives. And the truth of the matter is, yes, this team finished the season horribly. It played awful.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at it, you see that there should be elements that should help this team bounce back. You have a quarterback who is not that far removed from an elite level playing season.
Right.
Maybe he might not be an MVP candidate again, but he can at least play to the level like a top 5, maybe top 10 quarterback, at least. You have a decent offensive line. Yes, you might be replacing your center, but you still have 2 good tackles, 2 good guards coming back. Maybe some question marks with your running back, but you had decent running backs in the room. Maybe Swift comes back. Maybe you try and replace him within the draft. Maybe you try and find somebody in free agency. But that should not be a huge hole to fill. On the defensive side of the ball, you still got those big 2 redwood trees from Georgia that you have to see about. You have a defensive coordinator who's coming in who seems to have a use for a linebacker. Maybe we get one this year. We figure some things out. There's cause for optimism. So when you sit there, it's like when your team is horrible, when you have a horrible team and there's no chance of not being horrible that next season, there are storylines that get traction. Like you said, Jonesy, this shouldn't even be a story because common sense says there's no reason why A.J. Brown would want out because there's no reason that A.J. Brown's getting out. That's what common sense says. But when you're a horrible team and you hear players disgruntled, you think about that like, maybe A.J. Brown wants to be out.
We haven't heard players disgruntled.
No,
we haven't heard anything. But this is my point. We haven't heard anything like this except from an account that says rumor. So why are we talking about it?
Because that's what we do.
Not the royal we, but that's what they do, right? Like, here's the thing. Negativity has longer legs than positivity, right? Like
Absolutely.
If you said, hey man, like Vic Fangio, he's like a longtime defensive coordinator, he's going to own that defense, and Kellen Moore, 2 of the 5 years he's an OC, they were first in the league in yards, and you could spin this Eagles all season pretty positively. But like people are like, all right, well that's cool, or whatever like that. But if you say, oh man, you know what? Well, AJ Brown wants out, and who's gonna what are they gonna do with Brandon Graham and and Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey and is Jalen Hurts really a good fit for the Kellen Moore offense? Like you get a lot more legs out of that stuff, when you put it on the radio or you put it on YouTube.
But I can live with those conversations. If you're talking to me about possible retirements, that's a real thing.
You're just talking about straight up like lies.
We're just writing fiction now at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think part of the problem is, like you said, negativity gets out faster.
Right.
And so to sit there, it's easier. It's like nobody wants to talk about the possible positive outcomes of this offseason because nobody feels positive about the way the season ended. We're all angry. We're all mad. So therefore, let's just float out here that A.J. Brown might win out even though he doesn't.
But see, what I want to be talking about is what kind of scheme is Kellen Moore going to run to fix the flaws in his offense? What I want to talk about is, and this is what actually is something I want to talk about. And give me a second. What if we remember Sirianni's first year here when he was calling the plays? The Eagles were a little pass happy, and it didn't look good with Hurts under center. He gave it up to Steichen. They started running the ball a lot more. This became a run-dominant team. This team became the bully, and then they looked good. Steichen leaves, and my first thought was, with Brian Johnson getting the promotion, it created a dynamic where when Steichen took over play calling, Sirianni didn't really have as much hand in it because he was just shown to not be good at it.
Right.
But now when Johnson comes in, Sirianni's coming off the season where he went to the Super Bowl, and he can reestablish his position of being even if he's not the play caller, he has more say in the offense than he might have with Steichen. And it went back to looking like it did when Sirianni was calling the plays at the beginning. I want to talk about how this marriage between Sirianni and Kellen Moore is going to work. I want to talk about stuff like that. But we have to talk about A.J. Brown not getting traded.
Right. Yeah, that's what we need to talk about. Like, that's what we like when Nick Sirianni said at that press conference, I'm not going to be in charge of the offense anymore. Like, what does that mean specifically? Like,
but then he says it's going to be my offense and his offense. Like,
it's our offense, whatever that means.
Right. This is the kind of stuff I want to be talking about.
Right.
These are real stories that you could get legs out of.
That's not fun. There's no fun in that.
No. We got Nick. I keep calling him Nick. Vic Fangio runs like a 3-4 scheme, right? How are these guys going to fit? In a Vic Fangio scheme, because we ain't got damn linebackers. So where them linebackers coming from? You got Reddick on the edge, but you're gonna need a couple middle linebackers. You trust Nakobe Dean? Like, what are we doing? Let's talk about these things, like actual things on the field that need to be addressed in April and March, and when free agency and the draft come around.
We'll be talking about that in April and March and when the draft comes around. But for right now, we got to talk to get there. We have to talk about A.J. Brown wanting to be traded, Devontae Smith being unhappy, the fact that A.J. Brown wiped all of the Eagles stuff off of his Instagram account.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's 48 hours right there. That's a couple days worth of sports video right there.
And if we hadn't been talking about it, if we hadn't been talking for an hour, I would have led with that. I wanted to get to know what Roy had going on in his life because honestly, I wanted to lead with A.J. Brown wiping out all of the Eagle stuff on his Instagram.
You've been in this business too long, man.
Yeah,
man. Like,
what was the last? Towards the end of, I think it might have been the end of Jonesy's boy Chip's career, when the Eagles were bad. One of the big stories that offseason was, you remember Bryce Treggs?
Yeah.
Do you remember that big story about the rating he gave an Uber driver once for not having an aux cable in the car?
I don't know that. No, that story I don't know. No.
Oh my goodness! It dominated Twitter for like a week, and I'm like, you know what? These are the stories that become stories when your team is bad.
Yeah.
This is the nonsense that we're talking about right now. We're talking about a player, not even a star player.
Right.
We're talking about a guy on the team. And what rating he gives his Uber driver. That's the nonsense. And to me, that's the stories that happen when your team is bad. And fast forward to now, that's what this AJ Brown story is to me. I want to talk about the things that Jonesy was talking about. I want to talk about how this scheme is going to work now that Kellen Moore is here. I really do.
But JB, guess what?
What?
We have our own show. We can.
No, but I think he wants to. I think he wants to hear. I think he wants to hear those things too. Like I think he wants to.
Yes, I think I want to hear that talked about, and I want people to talk about it with us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think until free agency, well, March 1st, whenever, until free agency, until the draft, I think we're kind of stuck, man. Because I think I'm not going to talk bad about people, but I mean, like, I think that certain things have traction in this market over more than others. So I think the people in front of the microphones or behind the microphones play towards that, play those things up. And
no, you're right.
I think, I think that's what it is. And I hate the game, but like the Wire said, the game is a game. So,
no, you're right about that. You're absolutely right about that. And there'll be plenty of time because to discuss that and how and if this team can turn it around next season and bounce back. Before we let you go, I did want to talk a little Sixers with you though.
Okay.
You got Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
The news came out about torn meniscus in his knee. At this point, there had been talk about how the Sixers had been handling this up until then. He had sat a couple of games, missed the Denver game. In fact, a team got fined because Embiid wasn't even on the injury report going into the Denver game, and then he doesn't. And then he doesn't play.
Right.
Comes back in this Golden State game, and he plays. Looks like he's laboring, but then he hurts his knee again, and in a that looked legit.
Yeah.
That looked bad.
That's bad. So
now they're talking about how do you sit him? How long you sit him? What do you think about the way that's been handled so far?
Yeah, I think it's. Let me just say first, like I there was a whole lot of talk because again, this is I want to call it a dead period, but when the Eagles are down, people look for subjects. So there's a lot of talk the last couple of weeks about blaming the fans, for like pushing Joel Embiid to kind of go back to all this, to play the game so he can hit the 65 game threshold for all the awards and things like that. I mean, look, the impetus really comes on Joel Embiid in that organization, right? Like if Joel Embiid is too hurt to play, then Nick Nurse and or the doctors and or the GM, like Daryl Morey and or somebody on that team has to pull him aside and say, you can't play, right? So like Joel Embiid, like him getting hurt is not anybody's fault, but Joel Embiid and that team's fault, right? Because I think because it was clear, like you said, like it was clear that there was a problem with that knee before the Golden State game, right? But he continued to push through it and, played well. It's been playing well this season, but the narrative that, it's the fans' fault and the fans forced him to do this and the media, like kind of bullied him into doing this. I think that's garbage. Now, all that being said, the Sixers are in a really tough spot, man. Like it's sad because it's like, they were on a 56 win pace, before all this happened, like at the halfway point, which would be the most wins they've had in this recent run. So they were on a pace to do some really special things this year. Now Embiid's down with a meniscus. They don't know yet the severity, but I imagine he's going to be out for most of the year at this point. We all should be by this.
They said they're going to take the weekend to evaluate the plan going forward.
Right.
That's the official statement at this point.
Yeah, we should all know this by now because like we've had so many injuries in this town that we. He had the meniscus. Well, what year was that? When he had a meniscus surgery? I forget when. 18, 19, where he missed like 37 games or something. Yeah. So like if he does that, that's basically the regular season. Hopefully it's not that to that level, but you see how bad this team is without him. Like if he misses like 30 games, like you'd be lucky to be in a play-in, So I feel bad, man, because it's like they're kind of, I don't want to say they're snake bitten, but it's like nothing ever seemed like there's never one normal 12-month period with the Philadelphia 76ers. There's always something. Like this was the most optimistic I think most of us have been about a Sixers team since the Jimmy Butler trade, and then now look what happened. So I don't know. I feel bad. I just don't see this season having a good ending at this point. I'm not saying it's a wash. We don't know how bad the knee injury is, but I mean, like it's just a bad situation all around.
We can't never have no nice things, man.
Can't have nice things, man.
We can't have nice things. No, and we've been struggling trying to figure out what to make of this Sixers season.
Yeah.
And
you've been struggling to try to figure out what to make of this Sixers season.
Well, no, Jonesy. Well, let me ask you, Jonesy. What did you make before this? What
before this?
Yeah, before this happened.
That as constructed, the roster is still missing something that would allow them to get out the second round. Nick Nurse has Embiid and Maxey playing at a level I didn't see possible. Mm-hmm. They do have the assets in house to acquire the necessary piece, but as constructed, they're a second round exit team to me, and I don't know that I trust Daryl Morey to make the right move.
I agree. Well, I agree with everything, but the Morey part. And again, I'm not entirely not sold on him, but you're right. Like this team is still like, God bless Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level. God bless Tyrese Maxey who's playing in the All-Star level. He got named to the All-Star team today. Yep. So God bless them. Mm-hmm. They've been playing fantastically. They like when you see Boston, when you see, when Milwaukee's playing at 100%, when you see a Denver, when you see the elite of the NBA, it's clear that those teams are on another level. And it's like this team is not on that level. And no matter how good, your top two stars are playing, it's clear that that this team really probably won't get past the second round if they run into one of those teams. But you're right. They have the asset. They can make a deal. I don't know if those guys are available. I don't know if those guys are, Morey's going to be willing to pull the trigger. I think they can, but you're right. Like as it stands, right? Like if Joel Embiid was healthy, if everything was fine, I still don't think this team is going to get past the second round. And I think that's what every reasonable fan should think. Or should have thought.
And I don't want to actually, this is rhetorical because I actually don't want to take the time to dig into this. Just something you think about later on. Go over Colangelo's resume.
Listen.
And compare it to Morey.
I get it. I know. Well, all right. Yeah, we're not going to have this discussion, but I had this discussion before. I had this discussion before when Sam Hinkie was here. I had this discussion before. People don't like it, but I'm like, all right, I'm sorry. I don't mean to get into this tangent, but I'm like, look, man, it's like what them Rockets teams win. All right, like what do those Rockets teams win? All right, I'm saying, like, God bless Sam Hinkie. He did a great job, getting assets or whatever like that. Rockets ain't win nothing. All right,
and that's my point. Like that. That's why I don't know that I trust Colangelo. I mean, not trust Morey. Excuse me.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
I'm not saying he can't get it done,
right?
But he's not the GM. I'm looking at like he's going to go and identify the perfect piece every time.
That's more than fair. That's more than fair.
Is there anything that we could to end this show on like a positive note? Does anybody have any sort of positivity for me? That's what I'm looking for right now.
If you want some, you really want some positivity?
Yes. I want to be positive about something.
Listen, we got the union season starting up. I guess this month they got spring training in a couple of weeks. I think 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks and change from now, we got spring training. We got some positive things on the horizon. We got 2 spring teams who are pretty good. So we got that.
Are you really positive about the Phillies? I mean, you look at what teams have been doing. You look at what the Phillies have been doing.
I'm positive about the Phillies.
I mean, I'm positive the season's going to start. I believe that the season's going to start. I'm positive about that. Yeah.
The Phillies were a World Series team 2 years ago. They were a team that should have gone back to the World Series this year. They were the better team in that series against Arizona. Yeah. Regardless of what happened, they lost it. Not take nothing away from Arizona, but the Phillies were the more talented team, and if they were on their game, Arizona did not have the same level of performance that could match the Phillies when they're on their game. It just seemed like they got up 2-0 and got comfortable and kind of relaxed. But that team's coming back with a little more pitching than they had last year. It should be on paper. So, yeah, the Phillies could be fun this year. The pitching wasn't the problem last year, but the bats went cold. But
yeah,
the Phillies, there's no reason not to have hope in them.
I'm listening to you. I believe you. I trust you, Jonesy. I'm not going to doubt you. I'm not. This will not. There will be plenty of time in this year for me to talk about things that Jonesy's wrong about. March Madness is coming up. That always brings up things that Jonesy's wrong about. But nonetheless, all right. I will follow your lead on this. Pitches and catches report soon. That's Roy, right. You talk about the union's about to start back up. Let's get that football going. Let's get some soccer. It's time to do that soccer thing.
Let's do that soccer. That's right.
Let's do that soccer. Does that mean you will come back on this show and talk union with us?
I am not the most skilled person to talk union with you. I've only been to one game. I watched a few.
That's one game more than me. How many union games have you been to, Jonesy?
None yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah. Mine is on my list.
It's a good time, man. Like I highly like that stadium down there is awesome. Like it's really like all the seats are good sight lines. Mm-hmm. It's a good time. It's a good party environment.
Now that I don't doubt, because I've always heard, even like in the early days of the union, when the union was bad, when they were down, people were still like, this team isn't that good, but we'll have fun at that game. You go to the game, we're gonna have fun, and it does look like a nice stadium. So I don't doubt that at all. It's a beautiful stadium. So one of these days, I'll get down there. I'll go to a union game. I'll check it out. Ain't no thing. But it is what it is. AJ Brown's going to get traded. Joel Embiid's out for the season. Joel Embiid's out for the year.
Should the Sixers trade Tyrese Maxey now that Joel Embiid's out for the season?
Exactly.
We'll take all calls.
Exactly.
Should Maxey be traded now?
Should we trade Maxey now and just prepare for next year? 6'10", 215,
229, whatever. Yeah.
Yes. Give us a call. Let us know.
Oh my God.
Oh man. In fact, I feel like our viewership is going up since we asked that question. We're getting a couple more clicks and views. Roy, where can people check you out, man?
You can check me out. Follow me on Twitter at the BS Line on Twitter. You can listen to me every Saturday morning, 106.5 FM, WPPMLP Philadelphia. That's the Broad Street Line, 10 o'clock every Saturday morning. And football season, I've been on The Gambler, so Fox Sports The Gambler. You can stream that wherever you stream stuff. Your iHeart app. Football season's almost over though, so I got to figure out another way to kind of get on your boy Sean Brace's radar. So you'll hear me on the radio at some point. Not sure what I'm doing yet, but you'll hear me on Fox Sports The Gambler at some point this spring as well.
See, no, the problem is I'm too broke to bet. I'm too broke to bet, and I feel like I've done fantasy football for so long now that it's how many championships can I win? At some point in time, you just get tired of dominating everybody's league, which is what I do all the time.
It does get tiring. Can I do one thing before I get off? Since this is the world premiere for you guys.
Okay,
world premiere. For you guys. Give me like 2 seconds. Be right back.
Oh, what's Roy got for us, man?
This is
gonna be good. Yeah. I want to see what he's got.
So you talked about dominating the fantasy football league because I'm sure you are an esteemed fantasy football player. So of course we have a league at the Gambler, the Fox Sports The Gambler Fantasy League had the first league this year, and of course, as the fantasy football expert, had to win the title, and of course, with the victor comes the spoils. Fox Gambler championship belt, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice.
Let me get it right.
There you go.
There we go.
No
one see you guys are the first to ever see this. The guys at the station haven't seen this yet.
Nice.
It's the championship belt.
For you guys.
Made it debut right here.
The champ is here.
Had to get the gold. Had to show the gold to my guys. Because I know you guys appreciate it.
The champ is here, man. I like it. I
respect the belt.
Kudos to you. And that's another reason why they don't allow Jonesy and Brown up in the Gambler, because we take, all right, I take whatever fantasy football title there was,
Like listen, like if you want some of that smoke with the gambler, you're like just
Look, man,
we can work something out.
I
don't run the league, but we can find a spot for you.
Whatever, man. Sean Brake's been ducking smoke from Jonesy and Brown for years, man.
All I'm gonna say is it's been about 13 years since I've finished less than third in a fantasy football league.
Oh, so all right, we got some heavy hitters, man. Like, listen, like I'm down for invites to fantasy leagues. I'm just I'll put that out there.
What the hell?
Injuries can affect playoff.
I've never heard of that. What is third?
What? Injuries affect
I feel like I can't even say that word. I got. I don't know what that is.
You realize I have actual records of the picks you've made over the years, right? You know I have the actual tape.
Whatever. No, I understand. I ain't afraid of receipts. Man. Look, man. I ain't never deleted a post. I ain't never done any. Look, man.
Stand on it.
I stand on this business 24/7. It is who I am. What can I say? Greatness is. But look, always a pleasure, man. Proud of everything that you do, man. Thank you for taking the time out, jumping on the show. We man, we're gonna have you back. You part of the family, man.
Listen, man. Whatever you want to do with SIXERS, wrestling, whatever, family meeting, like whenever, like
exactly.
Look, you can always, you like my door is always open.
Jonesy isn't a wrestling fan, but we definitely a WrestleMania show is coming. Yeah.
We gotta do something. It's too.
Jonesy, you said you're not a wrestling fan, are you? It's not your thing. It don't have to be your thing. It's all good. No judgment.
I grew up hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
It's some of the newer guys. I'm not as into them as I was prior iterations of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a fan of the sport. Let's not say that I'm not.
Don't worry. I can get you back in.
Yeah, get him up to speed. You got 2 months.
I can get you back in, man. First thing I want you to do as soon as we finish this show, I want you one name, Jade Cargill. We'll start with that. You watch some Jade Cargill matches, and you'll thank me later. All right. All right. You'll thank me. Might get in trouble at home. Watch out where you open the page. But look, man, that's where it starts. Anyway, Roy, you always got an open invitation to come back on this show, man. We appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right, Mike Jones. Any final thoughts?
No.
All right.
Embiid's hurt. The Eagles stink. No, I'm yeah. Let's go Phillies.
Thanks, bro.
That's my final thought. Let's go Phillies.
All right. Hey, y'all. Thanks for joining us on the world famous Jonesy and Brown show. We'll catch you guys whenever we do another show. Maybe next week. Who knows? It's our show. We do it when we want to. Peace, y'all.
Peace.